Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Haberman, and I am here to talk to you about group dynamics. This presentation was given today at SMSU, and I had a handful of people that asked for it to be recorded, so I am recording it for whoever wanted to see it but wasn't able to attend the meeting. And I apologize, my video is not working. I've been having some issues with recording today, so it's just going to be my voice. Alrighty, so a little background about me. My name is Mary J. Haberman, not to be confused with Mary G. Haberman. That is my mother-in-law. I am a success coach over in the Deanne Griebel Student Success Center here at SMSU. I also happen to be a Wabasso School Board member. And prior to my success role, I was a science teacher for 11 years. You can see over on the right, there's a picture of my robotics team from one of our competitions, who still to this day make me very, very proud. Prior to being a science teacher, I was actually in manufacturing and warehousing for about 9 years. And prior to that, I was a cake decorator. I also held various random jobs. I was a CNA residential assistant, working in group homes, nursing homes, those types of things. I was a fitness instructor for, I think, about 10 years or so, 12 years. I was a salesperson in a store. I was a gas station attendant. I worked in fast food, phone rep. I've done everything, just about every job I've tried. And how this relates to group dynamics, I've worked in a lot of different jobs. And that means I've also had to work with a lot of different people. And so this has kind of been, at the time, it maybe looked like I was changing jobs a lot and doing a lot of random things, but it kind of ended up being the basis of my study going forward. More personal background, I come from a very large, loud, working class family. We are pictured up on the top right. That is just my side of the family. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and I married into a very small, quiet, upper middle class family. So when we go to holidays, they're very different on each of our families. And last year, my husband and I, so he is down in the bottom 2 pictures are me and my husband. We took on a foster daughter last year, and that added some new family dynamics just in our house. But we had 2 people before, and now we have 3. A little educational background about me. So I am working on my doctorate in educational leadership through MSUM, so that's Moorhead, Minnesota State Moorhead. And my research is on personality, hence the group dynamics and personality. I did originally get my bachelor's degree in earth science. I had minors in chemistry and geography. And then I went and got a business degree. The company I was working for just happened to offer it for free. I worked there for 2 years, and I ended up working there for 5 years, but for the 2 years that I was in business school, they paid for all of that. I did do a stint in grad school for geography, but decided that teaching is really, really where my heart is, and so I went into teaching instead. So how I got onto the group dynamics in the workplace. My first exposure was I had a little bit of a conflict with one of my coworkers, and we were very close friends. We decided that we were going to resolve this conflict on our own. And we used some personality testing to try to figure out how we were thinking and how we were communicating differently, like how we viewed the world. And that is what my original inspiration for my research was. It was just having that workplace conflict, talking it through, resolving it. We were so happy with the results of that. And I think that was a really huge turning point for both of us. Another more recent, so that happened about like 4 or 5 years ago. Another more recent event was last year. My coworker went on maternity leave, and when she left, our group dynamics in our office changed. Now, a seasoned scientist as myself, I'm not going to judge that. I don't have any bias. I just found it interesting that our group dynamics did change. And through us looking at the personality inventory, I just happened to see that, see which thing was so different about that one coworker that it made our dynamics change. And I just thought that was a very fascinating thing. And in combination with my experience with my family and specifically my taking on my foster daughter, it was those two things really inspired looking at group dynamics for offices, businesses, schools. Obviously, I used this in my classroom when I was teaching, so it has a lot of applications. So our agenda for this journey, I am an avid hiker, so I'm always on a journey. And in this picture, you can see that I had to walk across that creek. That creek is normally about 6 inches wide, and you can easily step over it. When I was hiking there a couple of years ago, it was flooded and I had to take off my shoes and socks. And so sometimes the journey is a hot mess. Sometimes you don't even notice that it's happening. So hopefully this journey will be somewhere in between to your liking. So some definitions that I am going to use for this presentation, they are definitions that I have come up with on my own, and it helps us set a baseline for this presentation. We're going to talk about career interests and personality. I'm going to talk about the measurement tools for each of them and how they work. And then I am going to just briefly touch on some interesting findings that I found in my research. So we're going to talk about the differences between abilities, interests, and skills. So abilities, in my definition, is natural gifts that you're born with. The biggest way that you could tell what your natural abilities would be is if you have any memories from when you were younger than 10, or if you hear any stories from family members or friends of the family of describing you as a baby or a child. And so for me, I've got a picture of myself. It looks like I'm about 10 months old, trying to read. So I was a very, very curious baby. Further on, I did have some musical abilities. I was an adventurer. I'll talk a little bit about those things later. So those would be examples of natural gifts. You're born with them. They don't require any training or anything. However, people that are interested in their abilities, sometimes they just choose to develop them as skills as well. Interests are things that we find appealing. So, say in childhood, you don't necessarily get exposed to anything that's new or different. You're kind of protected in the elementary school world. In junior high and high school, we start getting introduced to various things in our schools, in our jobs. Maybe our families can take us on trips. Those types of things you start to do when you're in the adolescent years. And maybe it's something you weren't exposed to when you were a child, and now you learn it and you think it's interesting. So one example is I grew up in a very traditional home, and so I didn't get to work outside on cars and stuff like that. And I really found that I enjoyed that as a teenager. And then finally is our skills. So those are things that we have to work at. So you can have natural abilities in something and you can be interested in it, and you still might go and get training and work in it and still continue to develop that as a craft. You can also not have any abilities or interests in it and still develop it. So those are, there's any combination of those, but all three will contribute to your group dynamics. The focus of this presentation is just your interests and your skills, because there's nothing you can really do with your natural abilities other than identify them. So maybe you do have some natural abilities. That is honestly on you to continue to develop them if you would like to, but it doesn't really apply to this until you use them as a skill. So I'm just going to give you my story, my background. natural abilities, I already mentioned, scientist, explorer, tutor, those types of things I did when I was a kid. Tutoring, the story with that is I actually, my parents or my mom said that I used to, when I learned to read, I read a little bit earlier than other children, and so I would teach the other children how to read. And so that would have been when I was very, very young. So I have no memory of that. I definitely remember doing an experiment where I was trying to get my younger sister to fly. It did not work the way I planned. My scientific design and methodology was a little bit questionable. And I did learn, however, that my sisters, the volume of my sisters screaming was about, it was pretty, I would say it was directly proportional to the speed at which my mother ran out of the house. So I did not publish the results of that study. Again, the methodology was a little bit shaky. I think I was maybe 10 to 12 years old when I did that. And I did learn that, there are some ethical considerations when performing scientific studies. When I moved into adolescence, I mentioned earlier that I got an interest in mechanics, drafting through those exploratory classes in junior high. Still had the love for science, did learn some ethics. Also, natural ability, technically is music. Also, I did take music lessons, but I had natural abilities where I could write my own music. And then into adulthood, and these are all things I've already talked about, just things that I have built consciously as an adult. So regardless if you are watching this video as a group or you're watching it on your own, I'm going to have you, as soon as I'm done explaining this exercise, I'm going to have you just pause and do some brainstorming on your own. So this is just for you, not necessarily for the group, but it's just for you. So you want to list some things that you're naturally good at, things that you definitely remember. So if you're younger, it's easier to remember those things before you're 10. Otherwise, stories that you've heard from other people or pictures maybe that you have. If if you don't remember, interests are, anything that you did in junior high and high school that you liked or that you were good at. So favorite classes, extracurricular activities like sports or clubs, even church groups, those types of things. And then one thing we often forget is college programs that you considered. So I mentioned that I had an interest in drafting, and I actually did apply to and got accepted into an architectural program when I was in high school. And I didn't end up going there, but that should definitely be listed. And then also skills, formal training. So things that you're good at. Think about things that you've done well. And so classes that you've done well in, but that were still a challenge, that you actually did learn something, or types of jobs that you received recognition. So think about jobs where you got, pay raises or promotions or some kind of an award. Those are things that you do really well. Those are measures of you doing something well. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. You can do this on your own. So you just pause and come back when you're done. So looking back at your abilities, interests, and skill, how do you think that those shape your work and your personal life? Do you use your natural abilities in your work? Did they shape the types of things that you were interested in? Did they shape the types of things that you got further training, either through your work or your education? Do you do those types of things in your personal life? Do you have something that you're naturally good at or interested in that you do as a hobby? So those are some questions for you to think about. Again, if you need to pause the video, go for it. So we're going to just jump right into Holland's theory of vocational choice. This is a theory that was written by John Holland, 1959. So it's an older theory, but it is still used today. This is a very, very, I want to say it's a durable measurement of how we choose our careers. Now you're probably wondering, Why are we talking about career interest when we're trying to figure out group dynamics? Well, that's because your interests do play a role in how you work together as a team. So John Holland, he got his doctorate from the University of Minnesota. He developed this career interest profiler. Essentially, the 6 little wedges you see on here, we have realistic, interests, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. So realistic, they're the doers, they like hands-on type stuff. Investigative would be kind of scientific, mathematics, those types of things. Artistic, really like to create new things. Social is the helpers. So, for example, like teachers and social workers and nurses, those are all very social careers. Enterprising are the persuaders, so salespeople, leaders, managers, those types of people are really into enterprising. Business owners, managers, those types of things. And conventional is the organizers, that they really, really like rules. Um, they really like to follow kind of conventional wisdom. And so those would just be examples of each of those. So this is just the in-group dynamics when we're looking at ways to get our teams to work together. It's just a quick, the little assessment, it's free, it's quick, it's easy to just get a quick measure of how your team is working. And so is the this is the profiler that is available publicly. It's sponsored by the US Department of Labor. If you want to take a picture with your phone, go for it. Otherwise, I included the link. So this is just a really good tool to give you a glimpse at what types of things you're interested in. A lot of people surprisingly do not know what they're interested in. I actually had something similar. I got sick a few years ago and I had to stop working as much. And, I very much enjoy teaching, and work was a very important part of my life. But once I got sick and then things slowed down, I had all this extra time and I didn't know how to fill it. And obviously I needed to take time for my health. But the interest profiler helped me develop some hobbies that worked really well with the types of things that I like to do. Some other uses, I mentioned this for the interest profiler. So yes, it's great for finding a job or jobs that you might like, especially if you're younger in high school and stuff. But as an adult, maybe you're changing jobs and you just want to make sure it's a good fit for you. But finding hobbies, that was how I used it. Also, one thing that I use when I'm talking to my students at school is helping them find their gen ed courses. So sometimes um, there are gen ed courses that might be closer to what your interests are, and you're going to get more engagement in that class, and you're going to get more out of it than if you were taking something you were not interested in. And I'm going to use business as an example because I know it's not one of the gen ed courses, but if you were not interested in business and you were taking a business class, it would be very, very difficult to get through that class and you would not be very engaged. However, if you have a passion for writing, and writing is one of your gen eds, there's tons of literature and writing classes in all the gen eds, and they approach it in different angles. And so you want to take classes that are going to be matching your interests. So that's just something that I use as a tool. And then again, team dynamics. It comes up again and again. So how do your interests affect your group dynamics? The big thing is the people versus things. So people that are interested in social careers, think about they're more interested in working with people. People who are interested in realistic careers tend to be more interested in things, working with things. So that's where that hands-on work comes in. And so if you have, the example that I list is I work in student services. That means I'm in a more people-oriented job. If I were working in groundskeeping, that's more of a thing-oriented job. And so those jobs, it doesn't mean that you're in the wrong or the right job, like I said, in the slideshow, it says the perfect team depends on the goals of your team. So if you have goals that require something that's hands-on, even though you're in a social job, you definitely want to have realistic people on your team. Vice versa. If you have a groundskeeping type job, but that requires a lot of working with people, you need to have some social people on your team. And then the opposite of that is the data versus ideas. So conventional and enterprising ideas are more data driven. So managers, they like to see their numbers when they are making decisions. And the conventional people are the ones that are compiling those numbers and getting them ready for the managers. So accounting would be an example. Um, the other side of that is the idea people. So investigators and artists, they really are coming up with new ideas on a pretty regular basis. They just think of new things all the time. And so the comparison here would be, majoring in a business versus majoring in biology. Those would be kind of different sides of that spectrum. And the idea is on your team, like I said, it depends on the goals of your team. Do you need to be a data-driven team? Or do you need to, or are you guys getting kind of stagnant? Do you need more newer ideas on your team? So it might be beneficial if you need some new ideas to have some of those investigative or artistic people on your team. But if you have way too many creative people on your team, maybe you need some more data-driven people on your team. So just having that knowledge of what you need for your team and then filling it from there. So this is just a quick would you rather. If you don't want it, if you don't want to do all the interest surveys, would you rather work with people or things? And would you rather work with data and ideas? There's no wrong answer. It's just kind of a would you rather. Next, so the next one we are working on is the Big Five theory, cybernetic Big Five theory. This is a personality theory. However, it is cybernetic means that it's a goal theory. So kind of like an if-then statement, if you're extroverted, you're going to act a certain way. If you're open, you're going to act a certain way. So it kind of follows that. This was developed in 2015 by Colin DeYoung. He's a professor at the University of Minnesota. He developed this framework um, in kind of together with biology. And so a lot of these systems have relationships to our biological systems. And so personally, I very much like this because it's tying in that physical science, which I very much like. To measure this, he uses something called the Big Five Aspects scale. This was developed by a bunch of authors, including DeYoung, back in 2007. And the big five personality traits are extroversion, openness and intellect, conscientiousness, agreeableness, and neuroticism, which I'm going to talk about each of those. Underneath, what you're going to notice is I have two little words that kind of describe additional personality traits. So this cybernetic Big Five theory, it talks about the Big Five, but it breaks down each of the Big Five into two pieces. And that's what my research is on. So that's what I'm most knowledgeable and comfortable with. But the Big Five also, it's just a very useful tool, and a lot of people are aware of it. Even if you aren't, it is a pretty common tool that's just used and readily available. So here's kind of that deeper dive into this. I don't want to go into too much detail, but essentially extroversion is related to your reward sensitivity. So, if you're assertive, that means you look forward to things, work towards things, whereas like getting a paycheck, whereas if you're enthusiastic, you're happier when you have the thing. So like a birthday present or something. So kind of, you kind of have a pull towards one or the other. I'm pretty assertive, so not huge on birthday presents, but I definitely like striving towards something. Striving towards a paycheck would be nice. Openness and intellect. So these are just kind of how you think. So extroversion is kind of that behavioral piece. Openness would be that that how you think. So do you like to think about ideas? Do you like to think about big picture, beauty, aesthetics, those types of things? Um, and it's a huge spectrum. So like people are more and less extroverted, they're more and less open. And that's fine. We want to have a variety of people on the planet. We have these different people existing for a reason. Um, there's some evolutionary biology evidence that shows that these are very important. We've evolved this way for a reason. So it's good to have both. Um, Neuroticism is down kind of in the middle. It does affect all areas, but that's kind of that emotional piece that we have. So when we think about if there are threats to our environment or uncertainty, that may affect our emotional stability. Some people are just more aware of threats and uncertainty than others, and so we call that neuroticism. Conscientiousness would be kind of how aware we are of motivation. So some people are just a little bit more disciplined, and we could say they're more motivated than others. And some people are more organized in how they get through life. And then we have social stability. So that would be the sociality piece, how well we get along with other people. And so this happens all instantaneously, but we're going to break this down to use it as a tool for group dynamics. So if you need a quick reference, this is Emily Wilby is a colleague of Colin DeYoung, and her aspect test is available for free online. So this QR code is good for a little bit, and then if you want to just use the website, you can. So that is available for free. If you want a quick glance at what your personality is, you can pause the video and check that out. So again, we want to focus on our personality as it relates to group development. So think of our group dynamics. So if you think about so first we had our abilities, then we have our interests, then we have our skills. So if you think about how you're going to develop skills, the example I have is on the bottom left corner is me going to business school. And then the example I have on the right is if you're working on a team. And so me going to business school, so that was skill development. I had no abilities in business. I had no skills or no natural abilities, and I had no interest. And then let's see here. Sorry, I have okay. So I am sorry that I got distracted. So going to business school, I go through these 5 steps. I had the opportunity to go for free. So extroversion was that reward system. Like I'm getting, I have the assertive, anticipatory reward that I could try something new out. I have the compensatory, the compensation reward, consumatory reward of being able to go for free. So I'm not going to have any pay. So my extroversion is like, I'm going to be able to get this done. Next, we're going to look at neuroticism. That's my warning system. Remember, is there a threat or uncertainty in this? So I have no interest. I have no natural ability. I have nothing to lose here. So it's not actually a big deal if I fail miserably because it's not really that important to me anyways. So it's actually a good way to look at something if you're trying something new, if you have nothing to lose. The neuroticism, that warning system, kind of shuts down, so it's fine. The downside would be, if you never get interested, it's hard to stay engaged in that. So next one is open and intellect. So I'm going through these stages. I have a genuine love of learning. I enjoy learning new and challenging things. This is going to be a very good thing for me to do. I'm going to learn something completely new and interesting that I've never tried before. The next one is conscientiousness. So I think of this as the get her done personality trait. It requires discipline, it requires organization. It's a lot of that high, if you're high in conscientiousness, you're really disciplined, really organized. If you're not, it's more like uh, the letter book system. You just kind of roll with it. And so both of those are the opposite sides of conscientiousness, and it's kind of a fun way to think of conscientiousness. The ability to work full-time and study full-time is something that I happened to do during my undergraduate studies. So I happened to have to work full-time and go to school full-time when I was getting my bachelor's degree. So I already knew that I had that skill. And I knew that I was going to be able to work full-time and get my master's. So that was not a concern for me. I knew I had that, so I could move forward to the next thing. And the next thing is collaboration. It's a very important part of that social stability piece. And the way that the master's program happened to work is we were part of a cohort. And so that's really important for working together as a team. Now, or working together as a team to all of us reach the same goal. Now, in this foster family example that I have here, so this would be like a team example. So, you know, we had a student who was in need. My husband had a student who was in need. We went through the background, made sure that it was going to work on our end, and we were willing to try it out. Like we were willing to do this. And the student was also willing to try. So like all of us were kind of like, hey, you know, we can't see anything that is going to be too terribly wrong with this. I think we'll give it a try. All three of us had uncertainty about if we were going to be well matched as a family. We were uncertain about the success that we were going to have as a family. So that definitely caused a little bit of stress for our team as a family. Like our little family team, that was a tough time for us because we were very uncertain of how it was going to work. We didn't think there were any threats to our little family unit, but we definitely had uncertainty as a family. The willingness to learn from each other, we absolutely had that. I think that's what the combination of us all being very extroverted and very open to being a family. I think that was our saving grace. That's, our daughter no longer lives with us. She turned 18. So we definitely, we still communicate, we still get along. So it was definitely, I think that was our saving grace, was that we kind of share those traits. I could be wrong, but that's my opinion of what I found. And then the conscientiousness. So I'm definitely more of a getter done, and my family is a little bit more easygoing. And so that was one of those dynamics that changed in our family. So we definitely slowed it down as a family, and I think that's good. I think we had a lot more quality family time together, and that's important. But it was just something that did change. And another one that changed that's, interesting for our dynamics, because my husband and my daughter are just a little bit more agreeable than I am. We were kind of forced into the community a little bit. She was in softball. We were part of, softball parents, and we are meeting with people in the community that we normally would not have met without having a child. And so it was just a very cool experience to see our family dynamics change over the year. So this is something that I want you to try out. So you can do this one of two ways. You can either try it out on your own with a goal that you have for your team, or you can try it out with me and just follow along. And so I'll just walk you through the 5 steps, and then if you need to pause it, you can, and if you want to just kind of listen in the background, you can. So the first question you need to ask is, how much do you or your team want to reach this goal? Like, how important is it to everybody on the team? And so you have to think of kind of that reward system, right? If people don't want to reach that goal, if everybody's not on board with that goal, there has to be, so the goal itself has to be really important, that people are striving for it, or they have to be they have to get some type of a reward, some type of incentive, compensation to do the goal. The second one, what threats or uncertainties do you or your team have? So think about some actual threats. So threats are usually threats of punishment. So like, a lot of people in the workplace, if we're talking about, they are actually worried about getting fired. That's a threat. And I think it's a ridiculous threat that we would even have that today, but people do genuinely fear that they're going to get fired. There's also uncertainty, what happens if we forget or we fail at this project or we don't meet our deadlines. Those types of things, if you have people on your team that have those threats or uncertainties, you have to address it as a team and making sure that those are all laid out on the table so that everybody knows what other people are afraid of, and that way we can kind of reassure and or mitigate those things as they come up. As a team, we need to do that. For yourself, it's different. When you're just working on your own, you have to identify the threats and uncertainties, and you have to decide if it's worth it for you to just stop, to give up right now today and stop, or if it's worth it to push through and be uncomfortable through whatever goal that you're trying to get through. And then the third thing is, how willing are you as a team to give this a try? Are you open to the idea of working with other people? Are you open to the the idea of reaching this goal on your own? So being open to that, and are you able to visualize what that looks like? So those types of things. If you're not really up for this, maybe somebody else has to carry your weight if you're on a team. Maybe you're the leader on this team in this realm. So in each of these areas, you might have people that are more suited to get this job done than you are. And it's okay to pass the hat as you're going through each of these different steps in a team. Next is how disciplined and organized your team is. So if you're doing this on your own, maybe you are super disciplined and organized and you get things done. Maybe other people on your team are not as much. And so being aware of that and coming up with strategies as a team to get things done. You might have to go at a slower pace than you are comfortable with, and that's fine. Getter done people are definitely going to have more than one iron in the fire, so they're definitely going to have more than one thing on their plate. And maybe while they're waiting for their teammates to do something, they'll be working on another project on their own. And knowing that that's how a team might work together is very important. Knowing that some people need a lot of time to get projects done and other people need less time. That's important for the team members to know about each other, and it's important for the supervisors to also know that. And then the last one is collaboration. So obviously, if you're in a team setting, how important is it to collaborate versus compete? Some teams, like athletes, sports, as a team, you're collaborating with each other, but you are competing with somebody else. And so that competition collaboration piece is incredibly important to know where you stand as a team. Some teams do need competition. Some people are really driven to be the best, and so they have to know where that marker is. Some people, they just want everybody to get along. So knowing who is on your team and how that affects your dynamics. And then, if this is just you trying to set goals for yourself, just knowing yourself, how collaborative are you? Do you need to be on a big team or a small team? Those are types of things that you need to know. So this is the part where if you want to pause it, you can, but I am going to work through this exercise as if you, the listener, and me, the instructor, are a team. And so the goal that we're going to go on is we're going to go on a hike to Old Baldy Mountain in the Black Hills, where I like to travel. So how much do you want to reach this goal? So How much do you really want to go on a 3.5 to 4 mile hike out to the summit? It's a beautiful view. So that would be your reward that when you get there is this beautiful view. How much do you want to do that with me as a team? You figure that out. Um, you already know my half of the team is all about it. There's a picture of me there. I've done it before. Uh, I'm game. Absolutely. I'm in if you're in. So like, how much do you want to be? Would I have to offer you money to do this or some other um compensation? Is a good view enough? Maybe it's not. What threats or uncertainties would you have if you went into the wilderness with me? I bet you'd probably feel a lot safer going with me than somebody else because I've been there before. I'm an experienced hiker, so I certainly am aware of the area, the terrain. I also have on this on maybe not this specific hike, but on one of the hikes that I went on, I ran out of water and it was really hot that day. And so I'm experienced in kind of the triage out on the wilderness, and I know I've treated some injuries when I was out there. So any threats or uncertainties that you have about traveling with me on this trip, you know that I'm going to be one of those people that can mitigate some of those. So does that relieve some of your threat or uncertainty, or are you just not one of those people that worries? Um, think about your openness and intellect. Um, are you open to the idea of trying something new or trying something different? Are you open to the idea of seeing the beauty of nature? Maybe you're not, and maybe that's something that it would take a lot of convincing for me to get you on this hike, and that's okay. I am a teacher by trade, so I have a lot of patience in convincing you to go on this trip. Next, how disciplined are you? So, you know, disciplined and organization on a hiking trip. Organization would be, I would say, a little bit more important. Discipline is, I would say, just being aware of your surroundings. So one thing that I see when I'm out in the wilderness is people with headphones in. If you're truly scared about getting eaten by a bear, which is not going to happen in the Black Hills, but if that is a true fear of yours, you wouldn't have headphones in when you're hiking because you want to be able to hear your surroundings. And so that's just one example of discipline. And also, getting up in the morning. I mean, the hike is roughly 7 mile round trip. I mean, that's going to take, 2 to 3 hours, depending on if you stop at, in the middle to have lunch. So if you're more of a late riser, you might not make it back to the car by dark. So you want to be disciplined. And I'm super disciplined. I'm up at, 5-ish every day, depending on the season and the weather. But I would say on average 5 to 5:30 every single day. That is my wake up time. So that means I'm pretty disciplined. Um, whereas if you're more of a sleep in kind of person, between the two of us, we're going to fight over what time is the appropriate time to get started. So just know that that's how your team is going to be with me. Then the last one is collaboration. So I'm more of a competitive person. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to want to like try to beat my score from the last time I went to Old Baldy. I'm gonna try to push you to be your best. So I'm definitely a pushy person. You know, I'm gonna push you to your limits. Maybe that's not the kind of team you want to be on. Maybe it is. Maybe you need to be around somebody who's a little bit tougher on you. So just know that that would be an example of team dynamics. So, you versus the team. What are the places that you excel in or you think that you might need work in? So you don't, there's no judgment as to if you score high or low in something, but just think about all of those pieces of the team. So I gave the example of us hiking through the woods. What is something that you felt like you would definitely be a great member, a great asset to my team? if you went along? What is something that you probably are a little worried about? And then think about the places where you would do really well when you're working on a team, or maybe places that you wouldn't work well. So this is just kind of think about things that think about things you need to work on. Is there a team that you could work with where they could help you, and they would kind of make up for that? So like I said, I'm definitely a little bit more on the competitive side. So I work really well with really nice teams, like really collaborative teams. And then I end up being the pot stirrer. But that's okay. As long as there's only one pot stirrer, otherwise you could just get cheese. So instead we have nice frothy ice cream instead of rotten cheese. If my contact information is here posted for you. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. The only thing that I have that I found in my research, I did mention that I was going to just briefly touch on it. I did find that a lot of people were in jobs that they were maybe not necessarily interested in. I know there's a lot of explanations for that, so it's just something that I want to point out. I felt that that was an interesting find. Um, and I very much would love to research that. I would love to continue to work with people. I do have some consulting work that I do for teams. So if you have a team that you would like some private work done, please let me know. I am definitely available to work with teams to see if there is something that we can do to help you reach whatever goals you have. You know, again, I'm a scientist, so I definitely don't judge. I look very openly at what the problem is, and I solve the problem like it's a math problem. It's I very much look at it clinically, and just because it's a lot easier to solve problems when there isn't all that extra jazz in. So, uh, thank you very much, and I am going to see how to get this stopped. I don't know how to stop this. Have a great night.